Okay, guys, I'm starting a bite-sized series of videos with some short PowerPoints on the archetypes in Jung psychology and how they connect to typology, because I've realized so far that some of you guys have been interested in this type of stuff, and especially when I do these like long 20-minute psychological type breakdowns, you guys have been giving me some good feedback, but I really haven't gone deep into this stuff and given you guys the background. So unless you've been reading a lot on your own, then you'll probably be missing a lot of stuff, or you might just be interested in the basic stuff or the foundational stuff and not really want to spend too much time on it. So I'm going to try to keep these videos short. And in this first PowerPoint, we're going to be talking about the archetypes. So in Jung psychology, at a very at the foundational level, at the bedrock of this psychology, it can be said that you have an inner world and an external world, or an outer world. So your inner world could be said to be like the world of the unconscious archetypes, or conscious contents of the psyche. Or like unconscious archetypes plus the conscious contents of the psyche. And the archetypes, because you might be like, okay, what? I've heard this word before, but what is an archetype? And you can say an archetype is an autonomous psychological complex that's mediated by primordial images. And then you're like, okay, well, that doesn't even help define it, because now you might not know what that is. And you can think of it like this. Let's say you have a tree in the outer world, like in the outer world being stuff that's not, inside your psyche, stuff that's not like a thought in your head. It's something that you're looking at with your eyes. So it's real, but you have contents of your psyche projected onto it. Okay, so you see a tree, and maybe it's an ordinary tree, but for some reason this certain tree, and you've seen maybe hundreds or thousands of these trees before, the same type of tree, but for some reason you're just completely fascinated by this tree. Okay, so to you, if you were to really get down to it, if you were really to get down to the reason why, in Jung psychology, it would be because this tree represents to you a primordial image that is within your psychology that you could call an archetype, okay? And it's autonomous. We can say it's autonomous because this will happen whether you're conscious of it or not. Okay, so you could say, okay, you see this tree and you're fascinated and you're like, oh, I have to be around this tree. I have to like maybe build a house by this tree, or it's such an amazing tree and it's the giver of life or something. And then you could, if you really dug deep down, you could see, okay, maybe this has to do something with the tree of life, the archetype of the tree of life, and not actually this tree. Okay. So we can say that in that case you projected archetypal ideas or an archetypal image onto a real object, onto an external object. All right, so we can call that projection. And we can say projection is basically like association of an archetypal idea or image with an external object. Okay, so it's something coming from yourself, but you don't notice that at first, per se. And everybody does it to some extent. And even in Jung psychology, you there's no way of like finalizing the withdrawal of all unconsciously projected contents of your psyche. Okay. And likewise, you can't completely project all of the contents of an archetype onto an object. All right. So we can say that projections, in that case, like let's say you realized, okay, this has something to do with me, with my personality, with my psyche, rather than this tree, which is really just an ordinary tree. It has something to do with a larger scale, with something that might be mythological, let's say. Then in that case, you've withdrawn the projection, and you've realized that this tree represents something archetypal about your psychology, okay, rather than the tree as it exists outside of yourself. Okay, and another example of that could be with the archetype of the Anima, which I've spoken about in other videos, and I've chosen, there's no real picture, like I said, like you can't actually completely project your anima figure, or a man's inner femininity, or the archetype of a man's inner femininity, onto something. So like the Mona Lisa, like, just because I have this picture, I just chose it because the anima is supposed to be something like mysterious, and it's something that's supposed to be profound to a man, for a man to experience. So like the Mona Lisa it's like a masterpiece, but it's also considered by a lot of people to be mysterious. So that's why I've chosen that. And it's not real. Okay, like the person was a real. There was a real model for the Mona Lisa, at least I believe so. But the painting doesn't represent something that's real. It's something it's a fantasy. It's painted. But there are people that commonly have this archetype projected onto them. So like models, famous actresses, and what have you. So for example, like, not a lot of people are going to project, not everyone, for example, is going to project this archetype onto an exact person. Like, not one person gets this projection. It's different for everyone. So for example, like, could be a Hollywood actress for some people, but maybe it's something else for someone else. Okay. All right. So again, an archetype is an autonomous psychological complex mediated by a primordial image, and the primordial image here being the anima. Okay. And that's something that it doesn't matter if you're aware of it or not, it can happen. For example, you can even say that the archetypes are autonomous in the fact that, or the fact in Jung psychology, that the anima has kind of like a mind of its own. So there's tons of archetypes, but it's like it's almost like there's a polytheism going on in the psyche. So instead of like where most people think that there's like a monotheism in terms of their ego, or at least that's like, they wouldn't tell you that, but that's how they feel. There's like, okay, there aren't all these extra personalities that are autonomously living within me. That's like your conventional viewpoint of like most people. But in Jung psychology, it's like, if you talk to somebody that is a Jungian, they're totally okay with saying, okay, well there's something called an anima, which is your unconscious inner femininity, and it's projecting itself onto, say, a Hollywood actress or a real person, maybe just like a regular person that you know, and it's getting you, in doing that, it's getting you to be fascinated with this person, so that you'll go form a relation with them, you'll go talk to them, and then through that interaction, you will actually learn things about yourself. Because in talking to this person, I mean, like, people don't usually take well, or not take kindly, but people usually find it a bit weird to have things projected on them, because when somebody's projecting something onto you and talking to you in that way, they're not actually talking to you, they're talking to something that has more to do with themselves. So if somebody falls in love with like their anima complex that's been projected onto someone else, they're not really having a relationship with the actual woman it's projected onto. They're like, just at some level in Jung psychology, in love with themselves. Okay, so let's go back to withdrawal. So once you've withdrawn this complex and you've recognized it as something coming from yourself, this is how you could say, in terms of the anima, for example, that the anima might get you to experience if you're a guy, and debatably, like, there's psychologists such as James Hillman, which says that both men and women have an anima, like soul figure, within their psyche, that it's something that gets you to get out of your normal routines and go experience other parts of yourself that you weren't consciously aware of. Okay, and I tried to keep that short, but we're at 9 minutes, so it's under 10 minutes. I think that was good enough. I'm gonna keep making these very short PowerPoints, and if you want a link to the PowerPoint, let me know. I can put it in the video. And in the next one, we're gonna cover a little bit more, and then typology is gonna make its way into this too, and we'll talk about how typology connects to this. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.